The Chinese Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security reported that, as of March 2025, more than 42 million people across the country have ceased contributing to Social Security, representing 17.8% of the urban workforce enrolled in basic pension insurance. What does this signify? It indicates a visible breach in the pension dam, and the unchecked flow will not only overwhelm the elderly, but will also surge back to engulf the younger generation. More striking are the specific figures. The discontinuation rate among those aged 25 to 35 reaches 31.7%, while among gig workers, it soars to 38%. In the first quarter of this year, over 23% of young people deliberately opted out of Social Security contributions, an 8.6% rise from the previous year. This is not a random occurrence, but a conscious decision. Young people are casting their vote with their actions, delivering a stark ultimatum to the Social Security system. Either it collapses, or we all perish together. Who are these gig workers? They are the most isolated segment of society today, lacking stable contracts, steady income, recognition in annual reports, prospects for advancement, or even the chance to partake in workplace banter. Their sole identifier is their disposability. When income is so precarious that rent must be calculated to the day, contributing to Social Security becomes an unaffordable luxury. To survive, they have no choice but to stop paying. Typically, Social Security shortfalls are covered by government funds, but in China, the response is not support, but a heavy-handed blow. A directive from the Supreme Court transformed voluntary contributions into a mandatory requirement for all. Failure to comply risks treatment akin to tax evasion. Presented as a safeguard for universal welfare, this mandate effectively functions as a disguised tax. The issues plaguing the Social Security system extend beyond inconsistent base rates, misallocated funds, or corruption, problems that have become all too familiar. The true threat is inflation. Contribute 1,000 yuan today, and in a decade, with the yuan potentially devalued tenfold, your pension may barely cover the cost of a loaf of bread. Is this an exaggeration? Consider the Russian ruble, which lost 6 to 7 times its value in as many years, excluding black market rates, a silent but devastating blow far worse than any policy failure. The roots of this issue trace back to the late 1980s, when Hainan, newly established as a province, saw state-owned enterprises buckling under the weight of pension obligations. Hainan's pilot program was considered progressive, a blend of social pooling and individual accounts, with local governments managing the collection and distribution of pensions. A few years later, the State Council mandated its nationwide adoption, laying the foundation for China's modern social security system. Yet over 3 decades later, the system has failed to address a fundamental question: who ensures that your contributions retain their value? In 2024, national Social Security revenue reached 11.89 trillion yuan, a 5.2% increase, but expenditures hit 11.99 trillion yuan, up 7%. For the first time in 10 years, spending exceeded revenue. In essence, the system now relies on the people more than the people rely on it. The harsh truth is that with an aging population, this deficit will only grow. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, of the 734 million employed individuals, only 171 million, less than a quarter, are fully covered by the 5 insurances and 1 fund. Among the 654 million workers outside the formal system, nearly 3/4 lack comprehensive Social Security. Most who do contribute pay only the minimum base rate, which counts as participation on paper, but is little more than self-deception in reality. Why hasn't the government enforced contributions sooner? The answer lies in economic realities. Manufacturing costs are highly sensitive, and small businesses cannot bear the burden. Private enterprises account for over 90% of urban employment. Mandating full Social Security contributions would increase labor costs by 20% or more. Such a blanket policy would prompt many companies to cut jobs, outsource roles, or even exit China entirely. The outcome? Fewer stable jobs, a surge in gig workers, and those workers bearing both individual and employer portions of Social Security payments, a policy design that is nearly unsustainable. Consider a delivery worker earning 5,000 yuan monthly. To participate in Social Security, they would lose 1,000 yuan, leaving just 4,000 yuan. With rent, utilities, and food consuming nearly that amount, would they pay into Social Security? The answer is clear: no. When today's meals are uncertain, planning for a pension decades away is an unattainable luxury. As of 2024, gig workers number over 230 million, comprising 29.8% of the total workforce and over 40% of urban employment. If Social Security contributions are rigorously enforced, this figure will grow even more alarming, with discontinuation rates rising and the funding gap widening. This is a downward spiral, and the only beneficiaries are the small elite who neither contribute to Social Security nor lack access to national resources. As the system's weight grows, it is always the young at the bottom who are crushed first. They are not unwilling to plan for the future, they simply cannot afford to. A poignant saying captures this: the poor are not short-sighted, their reality is simply too constrained. Their future is obscured because it is entirely mortgaged to today's survival. In this way, China's youth and the elderly Social Security system are not merely at odds. They are bound together like grasshoppers on a single rope. If that rope breaks, they all fall. There is a film called In Time, where humans have no natural lifespan. From age 25, a countdown begins, and the time on your clock is your life. The poor labor tirelessly to survive another day, while the rich possess thousands, even tens of thousands of years to squander, to enjoy, to err over a century. The poor remain trapped in their time zone, with no hope of crossing over. This is not fiction, it mirrors the reality of China's youth today, only the timer is called cash flow. Gig work appears to offer freedom, but it is merely a euphemism for lost bargaining power. Those working on construction sites, delivering food or unloading goods in malls late at night, do they not know stable jobs are preferable? Are they unaware that Social Security could secure their future? It is not a lack of desire, but a lack of means. They do not need a paycheck delayed by a month, they need cash tonight to pay rent. According to the 2025 National Bureau of Statistics survey, 429 million workers earn less than 5,000 yuan monthly, with 200 million earning under 3,000 yuan. For them, Social Security is not a safeguard but a burden. Every yuan paid reduces their ability to afford a meal, clothing, or rent. This is the so-called poor mindset. It is not a failure to grasp delayed gratification but a reality that offers no room for delay. Delayed gratification requires a foundation to build upon, yet these workers start from zero daily. When one is perpetually stuck, the next rung of the ladder remains out of reach. Contrast this with those at the top of the pyramid. Their pensions, healthcare, and housing subsidies are fully backed by public funds. They can legally bypass Social Security contributions while enjoying benefits far exceeding those of ordinary citizens. They need not fear inflation or discontinuation, as the system itself is their tailored refuge. This is class solidification. The poor's future is merely an extension of their present, while the rich's present is a glimpse of their assured future. The mandatory Social Security policy was intended to be inclusive, but its implementation risks deepening inequality. For high and middle-income insiders, it is enforced savings, reliably returned with interest. For low-income outsiders, it is a compulsory tax, with returns contingent on fiscal health. This is not inclusivity but the formalization of a dual-track system. Worse still, tensions between the young and the elderly are being deliberately inflamed. With a rapidly aging population, pension costs are rising, and the fiscal deficit is growing. The narrative blames young people for not contributing, leaving the elderly without pensions. Yet the data reveals otherwise. In 2024, the pension shortfall exceeded 100 billion yuan, and even if all 42 million non-contributors paid in full, it would not cover half the gap. The issue is not whether young people contribute, but that the system itself is unsustainable. The rules are straightforward. The elderly require pensions, so the young must pay more. Higher contributions reduce the young's spending power, which shrinks the economy, lowers fiscal revenue, and widens the pension gap, a vicious cycle leading to systemic collapse. When the system nears collapse, who is abandoned first? Not the elite at the pyramid's peak, but the majority at its base. When resources are scarce, society prioritizes the influential, the powerful, the connected. The rest lack even the right to protest. This is why young people are opting out, not out of defiance but self-preservation. When you know the ship is sinking and you are forced to carry more weight, the only choice is to leap overboard, even into the sea. The 2025 UN Population Aging Report projects that by 2035, China's population over 60 will surpass 420 million, nearly a third of the total. By 2050, the dependency ratio will fall from 3:1 to 1.3:1. In other words, Each young person will soon support more than one elderly individual, amid stagnant wages, rising costs, and dwindling jobs. How can they be expected to choose? The system demands that the young defer gratification, but reality compels them to spend, to survive. Consequently, young people no longer trust in the future, the elderly fear the present, and societal trust erodes entirely. To be blunt, in this era of mandatory social security, young people at the bottom face three paths. First, strive to enter the system, even if it means a lifetime of menial tasks. It is still safer than the instability of gig work. Second, cease contributions entirely, using the money to survive. Third, leave for a place where Social Security still honors its promises. The 42 million who have stopped contributing are only the beginning. When that number reaches 60 million, 80 million, or even 100 million, the Social Security dam will truly rupture. On that day, the fates of the young and the old will be swept away by the same flood. This is not hyperbole but stark reality. A flood does not distinguish between rich and poor, it simply follows the cracks in the system and rises relentlessly. Thanks for watching and joining us on this journey to unveil China's many layers. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and hit that subscribe button to stay updated. See you in the next video.